There was a man who spent his entire life in a single town, walking the same routes at the same time each day, so predictable that neighbors set their clocks by his passage. And yet, in the privacy of his study, surrounded by silence and lamplight, he dismantled the world more thoroughly than any conqueror ever could. Immanuel Kant never traveled far. He never sought fame or fortune. He never married, never raised children. But he asked a question that changed everything. What if the world you see isn't really there at all? What if your mind creates it, moment by moment, like a lantern casting shadows on a wall? What if the difference between reality and dream is thinner than you've ever imagined? And what if you've been living on the wrong side of that line your entire life? Tonight, we're stepping into the rooms he built with thought alone, where the furniture is made of questions and the windows look out onto nothing you can name. This isn't philosophy as you learned it. This is philosophy as it was meant to be, a slow unraveling, a gentle terror, a quiet dissolving of certainty, until all that remains is you, listening, wondering if you were ever really awake at all. First exploration. What if everything you touch is just your mind? Touching itself. Kant grew up in Königsberg, a modest city by the Baltic Sea, where the fog rolled in thick and the winters pressed long. His father was a harness maker. His mother, a woman of deep piety, read to him by candlelight. He learned early that the world had edges, walls you couldn't see through, cold that bit through wool, hunger that didn't care what you believed. The world was real because it resisted you. That's what everyone thought. That's what everyone still thinks. But then, one day, as a young man studying philosophy in cramped rooms with borrowed books, Kant encountered an idea that wouldn't let him go. David Hume, a Scottish philosopher, had written that we can never really know if the sun will rise tomorrow. We've seen it rise 1,000 times, yes, but that doesn't prove it will rise again. All we have is habit, memory, a pattern we mistake for truth. Kant read this, and something inside him fractured. If Hume was right, then everything we call knowledge is just expectation, a dog trained by repetition, nothing certain, nothing solid. For years, Kant tried to ignore it. He taught classes, he wrote small essays, he walked his routes, but the question festered. And finally, in his 50s, he stopped walking. He locked himself in his study and began to write a book that would take him more than a decade to finish. It was called The Critique of Pure Reason, and it reads like a fever dream written by a watchmaker. Dense, obsessive, ruthless. And at its heart was a single, devastating insight. You think the world is out there, waiting for you to discover it. A mountain exists whether you see it or not. A tree falls in the forest and makes a sound whether you hear it or not. That's common sense. That's obvious. But Kant said, no, not exactly. Because before you can see a mountain, your mind has to organize raw sensation into the shape of a mountain. Before you can hear a sound, your mind has to structure vibrations into the experience of sound. Space isn't something you discover. Time isn't something that flows past you. Space and time are the framework, the scaffolding. Your mind imposes on reality, so that reality can even appear to you at all. Think of it this way. Imagine you're born wearing a pair of glasses you can never remove, blue-tinted. You've worn them so long you don't even notice them anymore. Everything you see is blue, and you assume the world is blue. You build your life around blueness. You describe the sky as blue. The ocean as blue. But what if the world isn't blue at all? What if the blueness is just the glasses? And now here's the terrible part. What if you can never take the glasses off? What if the real world, the world without the glasses, is forever beyond you? That's what Kant is saying. Space and time are the glasses. Cause and effect, substance and accident, unity and plurality. These are all features of how your mind processes reality, not features of reality itself. The world as it is, the thing in itself, the ding and sitch, that remains untouchable, unknowable, hidden behind the veil of your own perception. You reach out to touch a table. You feel the grain of the wood, the coolness of the surface. But what you're really touching is your idea of a table, your experience of a table, shaped, structured, and delivered to you by the architecture of your mind. The table in itself, you'll never know it, not because you're not smart enough, but because to know something is to experience it, and to experience it is to filter it through the only lens you have, your mind. Kant didn't say the world is an illusion. He said something stranger. He said the world is real, but you can never step outside your own head to see it as it truly is. You're trapped inside the theater of your own consciousness, watching a play that might be based on reality. But you'll never meet the actors backstage. You'll never see the script. You're both the audience and the stage. There's a loneliness to this, a quiet philosophical loneliness that Kant himself must have felt, walking those streets year after year, knowing that every face he passed was a construction, every conversation a meeting of two isolated minds, each sealed inside its own version of the world. And yet, there's a strange comfort in it too, because if the world is something your mind helps create, then you're not just a passive observer. You're a participant. Reality doesn't just happen to you. You help make it moment by moment, with every glance, every thought, every breath. You are not a visitor in the world. You are part of its unfolding. The mountain you see is the mountain you see, and no one else will ever see it exactly the same way. That's not a tragedy. That's the quiet dignity of being human. Kant never married. He never traveled beyond his hometown. But every morning, he woke up and built the world again. And so do you. But before we leave this thought behind, there's one more silence worth listening to. Because if your mind shapes reality, what happens when you try to know another person? Second exploration. Did Kant discover why we can never really see another person? Kant once wrote that we are islands, not literally, of course, but philosophically. Each of us is an island of consciousness, surrounded by an ocean we cannot cross. You see the shoreline of another person, their words, their gestures, their face. But you never land. You never walk their interior landscape. You never know what it's like to be them. This isn't mysticism. This is the logical conclusion of what Kant discovered. If you can never know the thing in itself, if every object you perceive is filtered through your mind, then the same is true of people. You don't experience another person directly. You experience your perception of them, your interpretation of them. You see their body, hear their voice, watch them laugh or cry. And from all of this, you construct a model, a theory, a story about who they are. But the person themselves, the inner life, the felt experience, the what it is like to be them, that remains locked away, forever private, forever beyond your reach. Think about the last conversation you had. You heard words, you saw expressions. But did you really know what the other person was feeling? Or did you infer it? Did you guess? Did you project your own feelings onto them? filling in the gaps with your own experience, your own history. Most of the time, you don't even notice you're doing it. You assume you understand. You assume connection is automatic. But Kant would say, no. Connection is always an act of translation, an approximation, a bridge built from assumptions, hopes, and patterns learned over a lifetime. This is why love is so hard, why friendship is so fragile, why betrayal stings so deeply. Because you thought you knew them. You thought you saw them clearly. But what you saw was your version of them, your interpretation. And when they act in ways that contradict that interpretation, the whole structure collapses. You realize you were never seeing them. You were seeing a character in a story you were telling yourself. Kant understood this. He was a deeply solitary man, not because he disliked people, but because he respected the impossibility of truly knowing them. He had friends. He hosted dinner parties. He was known for his wit and warmth, but there was always a reserve, a boundary, a quiet acknowledgement that no matter how close two people become, there is always a final distance, a space that cannot be closed. In his later years, Kant wrote about something he called the sensus communis, the common sense, the shared sense. The idea that despite our isolation, we all participate in the same basic human experience. We all see the same sun. We all feel the same cold. We all hunger for the same warmth. And through this shared structure, we can approximate understanding. We can build bridges, fragile, incomplete, but real. Love, friendship, compassion, these are acts of faith. You reach across the ocean, not because you know the other island, but because you believe it's worth reaching anyway. Kant never married. Some biographers say he came close once, with a woman who visited Königsberg, but he hesitated. He deliberated. And by the time he made up his mind, she was gone. Perhaps he was afraid. Perhaps he understood too well the loneliness that lies at the heart of intimacy. Or perhaps he knew something else, that marriage would not solve the deeper isolation, the philosophical aloneness that comes from being a mind trapped inside a body, looking out at a world you can never fully touch. But here's the paradox. The same insight that reveals our separation is also the one that demands compassion. Because if you can never truly know another person, then you can never truly judge them either. You can never say with certainty, I know why they did that. I know what they're really like. All you have is your interpretation, your story. And stories can be wrong. They can be incomplete. They can be kinder. They can be gentler. They can assume mystery instead of certainty. Kant argued that morality doesn't come from religion or law or even empathy. It comes from reason. And reason, he said, demands that you treat other people as ends in themselves, never merely as means. Because they are just as real as you, just as isolated, just as trapped inside their own mind, looking out, wondering if anyone really sees them. You will never fully know another person, but you can honor the mystery of them. You can respect the distance. You can build the bridge anyway, knowing it's incomplete, knowing it might collapse, but building it because the act of reaching is what makes us human. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's more than enough. Maybe the whole point of love is not to dissolve the distance, but to sit with it, to acknowledge it, to say, I see your island. I can't walk it, but I'm here, on my island, and I'm not looking away. Kant died at 80, surrounded by friends, but deeply alone. His last words reportedly were, Es ist gut, it is good. He had spent his life dismantling certainty, and in the end, He found peace in not knowing. But there's one last question. One more room in the house Kant built, and it's the darkest one, the quietest one, the one where you finally ask, if the world is shaped by your mind, is loneliness something the world does to you, or something you do to yourself? Third exploration. Is the world built by your loneliness, or does loneliness build you? Kant's daily routine was famous. He woke at 5 in the morning, drank tea, smoked a pipe, and prepared his lectures. He worked until 1, then took a walk at the same time every day. So regular that people said you could set your watch by him. He ate dinner with friends, read until 10, and then slept, every day, for decades. A life of perfect order, perfect control, and in that order, a kind of loneliness so deep, it became invisible. He never traveled, never saw the mountains he wrote about, or the oceans he used as metaphors. His world was small, deliberately small. Some called it discipline, others called it fear, but Kant called it freedom. Because freedom, he argued, isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about mastering yourself. It's about building a life according to principles you choose, not impulses you inherit. And loneliness, deliberate, chosen solitude, was the price of that freedom. But here's the question that haunted him, even if he never said it aloud. If you shape your own world, if your mind creates the structure of your experience, then is loneliness something the world imposes on you, or something you create? Are you lonely because the world is cold and distant, or because your mind makes the world cold and distant? Is isolation a fact, or is it a choice? Think about it. Two people can be in the same room and feel completely different. One feels connected. The other feels invisible. Same room, same people, different experience. Why? Because experience isn't just about what's out there. It's about how your mind organizes what's out there. The story you tell yourself, the filter you use, the glasses you can't take off. Kant knew this. He knew that the world doesn't come prepackaged with meaning. You have to give it meaning. You have to interpret it, structure it, decide what matters and what doesn't. And that means loneliness isn't just something that happens to you. It's something you participate in. You help create it. Not consciously, not on purpose, but through the way you see the world, through the way you filter connection, through the way you decide, moment by moment, whether to reach out or pull back. This is terrifying, because it means you can't just blame the world. You can't just say, no one understands me, no one sees me. Because the truth is more complicated. The truth is, the world you see is partly a world you made. The loneliness you feel is partly a loneliness you structured. Not because you're broken, not because you're weak, but because you're human. And being human means being trapped inside a mind that shapes reality, even as it experiences it. But here's the strange, quiet hope hidden inside this terror. If you help create your loneliness, then you can also help undo it. Not by changing the world, but by changing how you see the world, by loosening the filters, by questioning the story, by recognizing that the isolation you feel isn't a fact, it's an interpretation. And interpretations can shift. Kant spent his whole life arguing for autonomy, for self-governance, for the idea that you are not a puppet of circumstance, but a rational being capable of shaping your own life. And that includes your inner life. That includes your loneliness. You're not helpless. You're not stuck. You're just filtering. And filters can be adjusted. Late in his life, Kant's health failed. His memory faltered. The sharp mind that had dismantled metaphysics began to soften. Friends visited. They read to him. They held his hand. And for the first time in decades, Kant allowed himself to be cared for. He stopped controlling. He stopped structuring. He let the world come to him, messy, unfiltered, warm. There's a story that in his final weeks, he could no longer speak clearly. But when a friend entered the room, Kant would try to stand, even though he could barely walk. He would insist on greeting them properly, with dignity. And his friend would gently push him back into his chair and say, "It's all right. Rest." And Kant would look at him with those pale, fading eyes. And something in his expression suggested relief, as if he'd been waiting his whole life for permission to stop holding the world together, to let it hold him instead. You've been holding the world together too. You've been structuring it, filtering it, organizing it, trying to make sense of it. And maybe tonight, just for a moment, you can let it go. You can stop filtering. You can stop structuring. You can let the loneliness be what it is, not a fact, not a failure, but a feeling, a passing cloud, a story you've been telling that you can, if you choose, begin to tell differently. The world isn't out there waiting to be discovered. It's in here, being created. And you're not alone in that creation. You never were. Kant discovered that we all wear the same glasses. We all filter reality through the same basic structures: space, time, cause, self. We're all islands, yes, but we're islands in the same ocean. And the ocean connects us, even as it separates us. Kant never traveled far, but tonight, in the quiet of your mind, you can travel farther than he ever did. You can step outside the story. You can see the filters. You can recognize that the world you experience is a collaboration between reality and consciousness, between what is and what you make of it. And in that recognition, there's a strange, quiet freedom, a loosening, a softening, a sense that maybe, just maybe, you've been building walls when you could have been building bridges. Kant's last words, "Es ist gut," it is good, even the loneliness, even the mystery, even the unbridgeable distance, because it means you're real. It means your experience matters. It means that every moment of your life is an act of creation, and creation, even when it's lonely, is still a kind of miracle. The world is what you make of it. So make it gentle, make it kind, make it soft enough to rest in. And when you wake, if you wake, you'll find that the filters have shifted, the story has changed, and the loneliness, at least for now, has become something else, something quieter, something that feels almost like peace. Fourth exploration. Can you ever know what the universe looks like without you in it? There's a question that lives in the dark corners of philosophy, one that Kant carried with him through the silent streets of Königsberg, beneath skies that never changed and routines that never wavered. He walked the same path every day, so punctual that neighbors set their clocks by his passing. But inside that rigid pattern, inside that clockwork life, a radical thought was turning, slowly, like a key in a lock that had rusted shut for centuries. What if you've never seen the world as it actually is? Not because your eyes are weak, not because you're distracted or foolish, but because the act of seeing itself changes everything. Because the moment light touches your eye, the moment sound reaches your ear, the moment reality brushes against consciousness, something happens. A translation, a transformation. The world pours itself into the shape of you, And what comes out the other side is no longer the world, it's your world. Kant called it the thing in itself, das Ding in sich, the world as it exists when no one is looking. The tree in the forest that falls in perfect silence because there are no ears to bend the air into sound. The color that has no name because no eye has ever translated wavelength into the warm glow of red or the cool depth of blue. It's out there, he said, reality, the true, untouched, naked universe. But you will never, ever know it, because you are always in the way. Think about that for a moment, not as a problem to solve, but as a kind of loneliness. The universe, in its raw form, is forever beyond you. You can reach for it, study it, measure it, love it, fear it. But the moment you do, it becomes something else. It becomes the universe for you, filtered through time, which is your way of organizing change, filtered through space, which is your way of organizing distance, filtered through cause and effect, which is your way of making sense of the chaos. These aren't flaws in your perception. They're the architecture of your mind. Kant saw this. He understood that time and space aren't out there in the universe, waiting to be discovered like continents on a map. They're in here. They're the lens through which everything must pass before it can become experience. You don't see things in time. You see things as time. You don't move through space. You construct space with every glance, every step, every breath. And if that's true, then everything you've ever known, every face you've loved, every landscape that moved you, every moment of beauty or terror, it's all been shaped by you, not created by you, but shaped, like light bending through water. The light is real, the water is real, but the shape it takes, the angle, the color, that's the meeting of the two. Kant spent years in his study, alone, writing by candlelight, trying to draw the border between what the world gives you and what you give the world. He never married, never traveled far, never broke his routine. But in that stillness, he was mapping something vast. He was standing at the edge of human knowing and marking the place where certainty ends. And here's what unsettled him most. If you can never know the thing in itself, if the universe without you is forever hidden, then every argument, every certainty, every claim to absolute truth is built on sand. You can know how things appear. You can know the rules of appearance. But the deep truth, the final answer, the ultimate nature of reality, that door is closed. Not because you're not smart enough, but because you're you. Because knowing requires a knower. And a knower always brings something to the table, always bends the light, always adds the frame. Imagine standing in a dark room, holding a candle. The candle shows you the room, yes, but it also creates shadows. And those shadows aren't flaws. They're part of the light. You can't have the light without the shadows. You can't have knowing without the shape of the knower. So, what does the universe look like without you in it? Kant would say, it doesn't look like anything, because looking is something you do. The universe, untouched, is neither beautiful nor ugly, neither vast nor small, neither ordered nor chaotic. It simply is, in a way that no word can hold, in a way that no mind can grasp. And maybe that's okay. Maybe the point isn't to escape yourself, to somehow see without eyes or think without thought. Maybe the point is to understand the gift and the limit of being human, to know that your world is real, deeply, undeniably real, even if it's not the only world, to stop grasping for the impossible and rest in what you have, this moment, this breath, this small circle of light in the infinite dark. Kant walked home every evening as the light faded, as the world softened into twilight. And in that dimness, maybe he felt it, the quiet truth that he'd never reach the final answer, that the universe would always keep its deepest secret, but also that the search itself, the wondering, the careful mapping of the border between self and world, that was enough. That was the work. That was the life. The thing in itself remains, silent, untouched, waiting for no one. And you remain too, here, awake in the only world you'll ever know. The world that's yours, because you're in it. The world that wouldn't be a world at all without someone to see it, to shape it, to hold it in the fragile vessel of consciousness. The candle flickers, the room breathes, and somewhere in the distance, a question rests, unanswered and unanswerable, content to remain a mystery. But before we leave this thought behind, there's one more silence worth listening to. Fifth exploration. Why does time only move forward? When you're watching, there's a strange weight to the morning, isn't there? The way time feels heavier in the first hour of waking, as if the day is still deciding whether to unfold or collapse back into dream. Kant knew this weight. He rose every morning at 5, no matter the season, no matter the weather, and began his day with such precision that you'd think he was afraid of what might happen if he ever let a moment slip. But beneath that discipline, beneath the rigid schedule and the meticulous routine, there was a deeper question turning, a question about time itself. Not time as measured by clocks, but time as felt, time as lived, time as the invisible current that pulls you forward, whether you want to go or not. Why does time only move in one direction? You've never seen it move backward, not once. You've never felt yesterday arrive after today. You've never watched the steam return to the kettle, the shattered glass knit itself whole, the words unsaid and the touch unfelt. Time flows, always forward, always onward, and you flow with it, helpless as a leaf in a river that has no banks and no end. But why? Kant sat with this question like a man sits with grief. Because time, he realized, isn't something that happens to you. It's something you do. It's the way your mind organizes the chaos of sensation into a story that makes sense. Without time, there's no before and after. Without time, there's no cause and no effect. Without time, there's no you. Because you are a being made of memory and anticipation, of past and future, of the story you tell yourself about who you've been and who you might become. Time is the shape of your consciousness, the rhythm of your inner life, and it only moves forward because that's the only way a story can be told. Think about memory for a moment, not as a recording, but as a kind of haunting. The past doesn't exist anymore, not really. It's gone, vanished, dissolved back into the dark. But you carry it with you, encoded in the neural pathways of your brain, resurrected in fragments when you need it, or when you least expect it. A smell, a sound, a turn of phrase. And suddenly, you're there again, years ago, feeling something you thought you'd forgotten. But you're not really there. You're here, now, remembering. The past exists only as a shadow in the present, as a story you tell yourself, edited and revised with every retelling. And the future is even more ghostly. It doesn't exist at all, except as a projection, a hope, a fear, a shape you imagine the darkness might take. Only now is real. Only this breath. Only this moment of awareness hovering between what was and what might be. But here's the unsettling part. Even now is slipping away. Even as you read these words, the present is already becoming past. The moment you try to hold it, it's gone. Like trying to cup water in your hands. You can feel it, yes, but you can't keep it. It pours through your fingers, always moving, always leaving. Kant understood that time is a kind of cage, not a prison exactly, but a boundary. You can't step outside of it. You can't see the universe as it exists beyond time, all at once. Past, present, and future woven together in a single eternal now. That's not a view available to human consciousness. You're stuck in the flow, riding the current, unable to turn around, and unable to see where you're going. And yet there's something beautiful in that limitation, something tender. Because if time moves forward, then so does possibility. Every moment is new. Every breath is a chance. The future isn't written yet, not in the place where you live, not in the lived experience of time. It's open, unfinished, waiting for you to shape it with your choices, your words, your quiet persistence. Kant never saw time as an enemy. He saw it as the condition of life. You can't have change without time. You can't have growth or learning or love. You can't have the deep satisfaction of a task completed, a promise kept, a journey finished. All of that requires time. All of that requires the slow, steady movement from here to there, from now to then. He walked his daily path, year after year, watching the seasons turn, watching the light change, watching his own reflection grow older in the window glass. And maybe he found a kind of peace in that repetition, a kind of trust. Because if time only moves forward, then you only have to face one moment at a time. You don't have to carry the whole weight of eternity. You just have to be here now, doing the next small thing. There's a phrase in German, Zeitgeist, the spirit of the time. But Kant might have said it differently. Not the spirit of time, but the spirit is time. Because you are time. Your life is time. Your consciousness is the unfolding, the becoming, the slow transformation from what you were to what you are, to what you might be. And when time ends for you, when the current finally carries you beyond the edge of knowing, what happens then? Does time stop? Or do you simply step outside of it, into some other dimension, some other way of being that doesn't require clocks or calendars or the aching pull of forward motion? Kant didn't know. He was humble enough to admit that. But he suspected that the end of time, for you, is not the end of time itself. It's just the end of your particular way of experiencing it. The river keeps flowing. The story continues. But your chapter closes, gently, like a book set down on a table in a quiet room. And in that closing, maybe there's rest. Maybe there's relief. The weight of time, the pressure to keep moving, to keep becoming, to keep holding yourself together in the stream. It lifts, and what's left is something you've always been beneath the surface, something that was never really moving at all. The clock ticks, the night deepens, and somewhere in the rhythm of seconds passing, there's a whisper. You have time. You are time. And time, for now, is enough. But before we leave this thought behind, there's one more silence worth listening to. Sixth, exploration. What if your choices were never yours, but you're responsible anyway? There's a kind of vertigo that comes with looking too closely at your own decisions. A dizziness. A sense that the ground beneath you isn't as solid as you thought. You make a choice, turn left instead of right, Say yes instead of no, stay instead of leave. And you tell yourself it's your choice, that you're the author of your life, the captain of your fate. But what if you're not? What if every decision you've ever made was already written into the fabric of cause and effect long before you were born? What if your thoughts, your desires, your sense of self, all of it, is just the universe unfolding according to laws you didn't create and can't escape? What if free will is an illusion, a story you tell yourself to make sense of the motion? But beneath it, you're no freer than a river that thinks it's choosing to flow downhill. Kant wrestled with this. He knew the universe operates on principles, cause and effect, action and reaction. Every event has a prior cause. Every cause has a prior cause, stretching back in an unbroken chain to the beginning of time. If that's true, then everything is determined, including you, including your choices. And yet he couldn't let it go. Because if you're just a machine, just a collection of atoms obeying the laws of physics, then responsibility becomes meaningless. Morality becomes meaningless. The whole project of being human, of trying, of failing, of choosing better, of becoming more than you were, collapses into dust. So Kant did something radical. He split the world in two. On one side, the world of appearances, the world you can see and touch and measure, the world of cause and effect, where everything has a reason, where the past determines the present, where science reigns. In this world, yes, you're determined. Your brain is matter. Your thoughts are chemistry. Your actions follow from prior conditions, as inevitably as water follows gravity. But on the other side, the world of things in themselves, the world beyond appearances, the world of you as you truly are, stripped of time and space and causality. And in that world, Kant said, you are free. Not free in the sense that you can do anything you want, but free in the sense that you are not reducible to causes. You are not just a product of what came before. You are something more, something that stands outside the chain, even while you're tangled in it. It's a strange thought, isn't it? That you might be both determined and free at the same time. That your choices might be inevitable and meaningful, predictable and sacred, all at once. Kant didn't offer proof. He couldn't. This was a matter of faith or hope or necessity. Because without freedom, morality dies. And without morality, what are we? Just animals, following instinct, chasing pleasure, avoiding pain, with no higher purpose than survival and replication. But he felt it, the weight of responsibility, the sense that even if the universe is a closed system, even if every action can be traced back to a cause, there's still something in you that chooses, something that stands at the crossroads and says, I could go either way, but I will go this way. And that moment, that tiny flicker of agency, is enough. Enough to build a life on, enough to justify holding yourself accountable, enough to make the effort worthwhile. You've felt it too, haven't you? The strange contradiction. You know, intellectually, that your choices are shaped by genetics, by upbringing, by circumstance, by the chemicals in your brain and the culture you were born into. You know you're not a ghost in a machine, not a soul floating free above the laws of nature. You're part of the system. You're woven into the fabric. And yet, when you make a decision, when you stand at the edge of a choice, it feels like freedom. It feels like it matters. It feels like you matter. Kant would say, trust that feeling, not because it's scientifically provable, but because it's morally necessary. Because without it, you lose yourself. you become passive. You become a leaf in the wind, a stone rolling downhill, a reaction without purpose. And that's not life. That's drift. So you act as if you're free. You take responsibility. You hold yourself to a standard. Not because you've solved the philosophical puzzle, but because the alternative is despair. Because if you wait for certainty before you commit to living, you'll wait forever. There's a humility in this, an acceptance. You don't have to understand the whole mystery. You don't have to reconcile the paradox. You just have to do the next right thing. You just have to show up again and again in the small moments where choice becomes real. Where you could lie, but you tell the truth. Where you could walk away, but you stay. Where you could give up, but you keep going. Kant believed that freedom is found in those moments, not in grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but in the quiet persistence of showing up, of choosing better, of acting with integrity even when no one is watching, even when the universe might not care, even when the outcome is uncertain. Because here's the deepest truth. Whether or not you're truly free, you have to live as if you are. You have to treat yourself and others as if choices matter, as if there's dignity in the struggle, as if the effort to become better is worth something. And maybe that's what freedom really is, not the absence of constraints, but the willingness to act in spite of them, to take ownership of your life, not because you created it from nothing, but because it's yours, because you're the one living it, because no one else can make your choices for you, and no one else can carry the weight of your becoming. The night outside is quiet now. The questions have been asked. The thoughts have been thought. And what's left is simpler than philosophy. It's the breath you take, the decision you make tomorrow, the small, steady effort to be who you hope to be, even if the universe isn't watching, even if the outcome is already written. You are both bound and free, both determined and responsible, both a creature of cause and a creator of meaning. And in that paradox, in that tension, there's a kind of grace, a kind of rest, because you don't have to solve it. You just have to live it, one choice at a time, one breath at a time, until the questions fade. And all that remains is the quiet certainty of presence. Here, now, enough. Seventh exploration. What if you've been living inside a translation you never asked for? There's a man standing in a room in Königsberg, and he never leaves. Not really. The walls are lined with books he's read so many times the spines have softened like old leather gloves. Outside, the world moves. Seasons turn, people marry and bury each other. Wars begin and end. But inside this room, time feels different. Slower. More honest, maybe. He's trying to solve something, not a math problem, not a riddle. He's trying to understand why the world feels like it's happening to him instead of with him. And in the process, he's going to quietly dismantle everything you thought you knew about knowing anything at all. Kant wasn't interested in whether the tree falls in the forest. He wanted to know why you're so sure there's a forest to begin with, why you trust that what you see is what's actually there. And the answer he arrives at, slowly, painstakingly, over years of walking the same route every afternoon at the same time, is devastating in its simplicity. You don't experience the world as it is. You experience a version of it, a translation. And the translator? That's you. Your mind, your brain. The architecture of your perception, built long before you had a name. Think about it. Right now, You're not seeing light. You're seeing electrical signals your brain has learned to call light. You're not hearing sound. You're interpreting vibrations, the smell of rain, the taste of salt, the weight of a hand on your shoulder. None of it is direct. It's all mediated, filtered, translated. And Kant is the first to stand up and say it out loud. You have never touched the world, not the real one. You've only ever touched your mind's version of it. And that version is so convincing, so seamless, that you forgot it was a version at all. There's something both terrifying and tender about that. Terrifying, because it means you're alone in a way you didn't expect. You're inside a snow globe, and the snow is your own thoughts. But tender too, because it means everyone else is in their own globe. No one is seeing the real world either. We're all walking around in our private translations, trying to describe the same thing in different languages, hoping someone understands. Kant called them categories: space, time, causality. These aren't things you discover in the world. They're things you bring to it. You can't see anything without space. You can't experience anything without time. You can't make sense of anything without cause and effect. These are the grammar of your mind, the rules you didn't write, but have to follow. And because of them, the world you know is not the world that exists. It's the world you can know, the world shaped by the limits of your perception. He spent years in that room circling this idea. He knew what it meant. If you can only know the world through your mind's categories, then you can never know the thing in itself, the noumenon. The world as it really is, untouched by human perception. It's there. It has to be. But it's forever out of reach, like trying to see your own face without a mirror. You can't step outside your mind to check if your mind is right. And here's where it gets strange. Kant wasn't sad about this. He was relieved. Because if you can't know the thing in itself, then you also can't be crushed by it. You can't be overwhelmed by a reality too big, too chaotic, too inhuman to bear. Your mind protects you. It gives you a world you can live in. A world with order, with meaning, with cause and effect. It's not the whole truth, but it's your truth. And maybe that's enough. But once you know this, once you really sit with it, something shifts. You start to notice the translation happening in real time. You see a sunset, and for a split second you wonder, what is it really? What's out there before my brain turns it into color and beauty and nostalgia? You hold someone's hand, and you feel the warmth. But you also feel the distance, the unbridgeable gap between their world and yours. You're both here, but you're both alone. And somehow, that makes the warmth matter more. Kant walked the same path every day, same time, same route. People in town set their clocks by him, and maybe that wasn't obsession. Maybe it was devotion to the idea that if the world is a translation, then the least you can do is be consistent. Be present. Show up to your own life, even if you'll never fully understand it. Even if the real world stays hidden. Even if all you'll ever know is the world your mind has made for you. There's a kind of humility in that, a kind of grace. You stop demanding that reality reveal itself. You stop insisting that your version is the true one. You let go of certainty. And what rushes in to fill the space is something softer. Curiosity, wonder, the quiet acknowledgement that everyone you meet is carrying their own untranslatable world. And maybe the best you can do is stand close enough to feel the edges of it, to let your translation touch theirs just for a moment, and hope something real passes between you. Kant never left that room, but in a way, He traveled farther than anyone. He went to the edge of what the mind can know and stood there, looking out at the dark. And when he came back, he brought a message, not a solution, just a whisper. You are the translator. You always have been. And the world you live in is the world you've made bearable. And maybe that's not loneliness. Maybe that's mercy. But before we leave this thought behind, there's one more silence worth listening to. Eighth, exploration. Why do you keep searching for proof when belief is all you've ever had? There's a moment in every life when you realize you've been building on sand, not because you were careless, but because there was never any solid ground to begin with. Kant knew this. He felt it the way you feel cold water on your skin, immediate, undeniable, impossible to ignore. He watched people argue about God, about the soul, about whether the universe had a beginning or went on forever. And he realized they were all doing the same thing. They were trying to use reason to reach beyond reason, trying to prove things that can't be proven. And the scaffolding kept collapsing, not because they weren't smart enough, but because reason has limits. They were standing at the edge, shouting into the void, waiting for an echo that would never come. He called it transcendental illusion, the mind's natural tendency to overstep, to want more than it can have, to demand certainty about things it can only believe. And the cruelty of it is that this isn't a mistake. It's built into you. Your mind doesn't just want to know what's in front of you. It wants to know what's behind everything. The first cause, the ultimate reason, the thing that makes it all make sense. And so you reach, you stretch, you build arguments like ladders, climbing higher and higher, thinking that if you just go far enough, you'll break through. You'll touch the absolute. But you won't. You can't. Because reason only works inside experience, inside the world of space and time and cause and effect. The moment you try to go beyond that, to ask what caused the first cause, or whether the soul exists outside the body, you're using tools that don't work there. It's like trying to measure love with a ruler. The ruler isn't broken. It's just the wrong tool. And the tragedy is that you'll keep trying anyway, because the questions won't stop. They burn too bright. Kant didn't say you shouldn't ask the questions. He said you should stop pretending you can answer them. You can't prove God exists, but you also can't prove he doesn't. You can't prove the soul is immortal, but you can't prove it isn't. These things live in a different realm, not the realm of knowledge, the realm of faith. And faith doesn't need proof. In fact, the moment you try to prove it, you've already lost it. Because faith is what you hold when proof runs out. There's something deeply human about that. This need to know, to be certain, to have evidence. We live in a world that worships proof. Show me the data. Show me the study. Show me the receipts. And if you can't, then it's not real. But Kant is saying, gently, almost apologetically, that some of the most important things in your life will never have proof. Love, meaning, purpose, the sense that your life matters. You can't prove any of it. You just feel it, or you don't. And either way, you have to live as if something is true, even when you can't be sure. He drew a line. On one side, knowledge, things you can prove, test, measure, science, math, the physical world. On the other side, belief, things you can't prove but need anyway, morality, freedom, God. He didn't say one side was better. He said they're different. And the mistake, the thing that's been tearing people apart for centuries, is trying to drag one side into the other, trying to make belief into knowledge, or dismissing belief because it isn't knowledge. You've felt this, haven't you? The exhaustion of trying to prove something you just know, not in your head, in your chest, in your bones. You know the person you love is worth it, even when they're difficult. You know your life has meaning, even when it feels small. You know there's something more, even when you can't name it. But you live in a world that demands evidence. So you scramble. You build arguments. You point to moments, to feelings, to signs. And it's never enough, because it was never supposed to be. Belief doesn't live in the courtroom. It lives in the quiet, in the choice you make when no one's watching. Kant spent years dismantling the arguments, the ontological proof, the cosmological proof, the teleological proof. All these grand attempts to prove God. And one by one he showed why they don't work. Not because God isn't real, but because proof isn't the point. God, if God exists beyond the reach of human reason, in the unknowable, in the thing in itself. And maybe that's exactly where God should be, not trapped in logic, not reduced to a syllogism, but free, infinite, beyond. And here's the twist. Once you stop trying to prove it, something shifts. The pressure lifts. You're not defending anymore. You're just living. You're not trying to convince anyone that your life has meaning. You're just living as if it does. And that as if is everything. It's the bridge between knowledge and faith, between certainty and hope. You act as if you're free, even though you can't prove free will. You act as if kindness matters, even though you can't prove morality is real. You act as if there's something worth waking up for, even on the days when the proof is nowhere to be found. Kant called it practical reason, the part of you that doesn't need proof to act, that makes choices based on what should be, not just what is. And maybe that's the bravest thing, to live in the uncertainty, to carry your beliefs like candles in the wind, knowing they might go out, but holding them steady anyway. The people who argued about God never convinced each other. They never will, because they're not really arguing about evidence. They're arguing about what they need to be true. And Kant is saying, quietly, from that little room in Königsberg, that it's okay. You don't have to prove it. You just have to live it. And maybe that's harder. But it's also more honest. You've been searching for proof. But what if the search itself is the answer? What if belief is the thing you do when knowing runs out, and you keep walking anyway? But before we let this settle, there's one last door left unopened. Ninth, exploration. What if freedom is the loneliest burden you'll ever carry? Kant believed in freedom, not the loud kind, not the freedom to do whatever you want, the quiet kind, the terrifying kind, the kind that makes you responsible. He believed that somewhere inside you, beneath the habits, the conditioning, the circumstances, there's a part of you that chooses, not because of desire, not because of fear, but because of something deeper, something he called the will. And that will is free. Completely, unbearably free. But here's the thing no one tells you about freedom. It's not a gift. It's a weight. Because if you're free, then you can't blame the world anymore. You can't say you had no choice. You can't point to your past, your pain, your limits, and say, that's why I am the way I am. You can. People do. But Kant would look at you with those tired, unblinking eyes and say, no, you chose. Maybe not consciously, maybe not easily, but you chose. And now you have to live with it. He wasn't cruel. He was honest. And honesty sometimes feels like cruelty. Because the truth is this: you are more free than you want to admit. And that freedom is crushing. It means that every moment you're deciding who you are, not who you were, not who you wish you could be, who you are, right now, in this breath, and the next, and the one after that. Most people spend their lives running from this. They build cages and call them safety. They follow rules, routines, expectations, and convince themselves they have no choice. And maybe that's easier. Maybe it's unbearable to wake up every morning and know that you could be different, that you could choose differently, that the life you're living is the life you're allowing, not the life that was forced on you, the life you're complicit in, the life you're too tired, too scared, or too resigned to change. Kant saw this. He saw people blaming their nature, their upbringing, their circumstances, and he said, no, you're not just a product of cause and effect. You're not just a domino in a line, knocked over by the one before you. You're a break in the chain, a moment of rebellion, a place where causality stops and something else begins, something uncaused, something free. And that something is you, the real you, the one who decides. But freedom like that is lonely, because it means no one else can carry it for you. No one can choose for you. No one can save you from yourself. You can read all the books, listen to all the advice, follow all the rules, but in the end, in the moment that matters, you're alone, just you and the choice. And whatever you choose becomes who you are. Not forever, just for now. But now is all there is. And maybe that's why people are so desperate to believe in fate, in destiny, in the idea that it was always going to turn out this way. Because if it was meant to be, then you're off the hook. You didn't fail. You were just following the script. But Kant would say, there is no script. There's just you. And the terrifying, beautiful fact that you could write it differently, right now, if you wanted to. He also knew this was impossible to prove. You can't prove you're free. Every choice you make could be explained by something else. Your biology, your childhood, the firing of neurons in your brain. Science can trace it all back, link by link, until there's no room left for freedom. And Kant didn't argue. He said, you're right. From the outside, it looks like causality. But from the inside, from the place where you actually live, it feels like choice. And that feeling matters. Because you have to act. You have to decide. And the only way to act is to act as if you're free. Even if you're not sure. Even if you can't prove it. You act as if your choices matter. Because what's the alternative? To live as if you're a puppet? To give up before you even try? So you carry it. This freedom. This weight. This lonely, undeniable responsibility. And some days it's too much. Some days you want someone else to decide, to tell you what to do, to take the burden off your shoulders. But no one can. No one will. Because this is the price of being human. You get to choose. And that means you get to fail. And that means you get to try again. Kant walked the same path every day. People thought it was routine. Maybe it was ritual. Maybe it was his way of proving to himself that even in the smallest choice, left foot, right foot, same street, same time, he was free. That he could stop, turn around, walk a different way. And he didn't. Not because he couldn't, but because he chose not to. And that choice, quiet and invisible as it was his. You're carrying this too. You always have been. The freedom to be different, the freedom to be better, the freedom to stay exactly as you are, and no one will make you choose. No one will force you to change. But every moment you let pass without choosing, you're still choosing. You're choosing this, and that's okay. As long as you know, as long as you're honest. Because freedom isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about owning what you do. It's about standing in the wreckage or the beauty of your life and saying, I made this, not all of it, but enough. Enough that I can't pretend I'm just a victim. Enough that I have to live with it. Enough that I could, maybe, if I wanted to, make it different. And that's the loneliest thing, and the most powerful, because it means you're not a passenger, you're not drifting, you're here, awake, responsible, free. And maybe that's all Kant wanted you to know, that you could choose, that you always could, and that the weight of that choice is the price of being real. The room in Königsberg is empty now, but the question is still there, waiting. What will you choose? Not tomorrow, not someday. Right now, in the dark, when no one's watching. Just you, and the terrifying, quiet mercy of your own freedom. 10th exploration. What if the thing you're most certain of has never actually existed? There's a peculiar silence that settles over a room when someone speaks a truth no one wanted to hear. Immanuel Kant knew that silence well. He spent decades in Königsberg, walking the same path every afternoon with such regularity that townspeople set their clocks by him. But inside that disciplined exterior, something radical was brewing. A question so destabilizing it would crack the foundation of everything philosophy had built before him. He asked it quietly, almost apologetically at first. What if the world you're so certain of, the solid, dependable world of trees and stones and morning light, what if none of it exists the way you think it does? Not in the way mystics mean when they say the world is illusion. Kant wasn't interested in mysticism. He was interested in something far more unsettling. He wanted to know what happens when you realize that the objects you've touched your entire life, the things you've built your sense of reality around, might be nothing more than appearances. Phenomena, he called them. Echoes of something else. Something you can never reach. Imagine holding an apple in your hand. Feel its weight, its cool skin, the slight give when you press your thumb against it. You'd swear it's real. You'd bet your life on it. But Kant would lean forward in that dim study of his, the candlelight catching the edge of his spectacles. And he'd ask you, are you holding the apple, or are you holding your mind's version of the apple? Because here's what kept him awake. The realization that everything you experience is filtered through the architecture of your own consciousness. Space, time, causality. These aren't features of the world itself. They're the lenses you're born wearing. You've never seen the world without them. You never will. He called the real thing, the thing in itself, the noumenon, and it lives forever behind a veil you cannot pull back. You can know that it's there, the way you can know there's a room on the other side of a locked door, but you'll never walk inside. Every tree you've ever seen is your tree, constructed by your mind, according to rules you didn't choose. Every face you've ever loved is a translation, not the original text. There's something both terrifying and oddly comforting in this. Terrifying because it means you've spent your whole life in a kind of theater, watching shadows of the real. Comforting because it means everyone else is in the same theater, watching the same shadows. And maybe, just maybe, That's enough. Maybe the shared dream is all we were ever meant to have. Kant didn't write this to make you doubt your sanity. He wrote it to show you the limits of what you can know, so you'd stop asking impossible questions and start asking better ones. He wanted to draw a line around human understanding and say, here, inside this circle, you can build knowledge. Out there beyond it, you can only wonder. But that line, it cuts deep. It means the universe as it truly is remains forever untouchable. You've been living your entire life on the surface of something you'll never see the depths of. The coffee you drink each morning, the weight of fatigue in your bones, the color of twilight. All of it is your mind's interpretation, not the thing itself. And yet, you keep reaching, you keep touching, you keep believing that the world is solid beneath your feet, even though Kant has just told you it might not be there at all the way you imagine. This is the human condition he uncovered, the condition of beings who can never escape their own perspective, who are trapped inside the only pair of eyes they'll ever have. Some nights, if you let this thought settle long enough, it stops feeling like a loss and starts feeling like a strange kind of intimacy. If everything you experience is shaped by your mind, then your mind is not separate from the world. It's the place where the world comes alive. You are the room where reality appears, the still pool where the stars reflect. Kant didn't rob you of certainty. He gave you something quieter, the knowledge that you live inside a mystery you'll never solve. And maybe that's why he walked the same path every day, through the streets of Königsberg, under the same trees. Maybe he understood that when you can't touch the thing itself, you learn to love the appearance. You learn to be gentle with the world your mind has made. Eleventh, exploration. Does knowing destroy the very thing you're trying to understand? There's a moment that comes late in certain conversations, when the talking stops and someone stares into the middle distance, realizing they've just said something they can't take back. Kant had that moment, and it changed everything. He'd been circling the same problem for years. How do we know anything at all? The empiricists said, knowledge comes from experience. Touch the stove, learn it, burns. The rationalists said knowledge comes from reason. Think hard enough, find the truth. But Kant saw the flaw in both. Experience without concepts is blind. Concepts without experience are empty. Neither one alone could build the cathedral of human understanding. So he proposed something audacious, something that felt like heresy at the time. He said, you don't discover knowledge, you create it. Not in the sense that you invent facts or fantasize truth, but in the deeper, stranger sense that the human mind actively shapes what it perceives. You are not a passive receiver of information, a blank slate waiting for the world to write on you. You are a participant in the act of knowing. Your mind imposes structure, categories like causality, substance, unity, onto the raw chaos of sensation. Without that structure, the world would be a meaningless blur, a noise with no signal. Kant called this the Copernican revolution in philosophy. Just as Copernicus said the earth revolves around the sun, not the other way around. Kant said objects conform to our mind, not the other way around. The mind is not a mirror reflecting reality. It's a forge, shaping reality into something we can comprehend. But here's where the tragedy begins. If knowing requires the mind to shape what it knows, then you can never know the thing as it truly is, only as you've shaped it. The act of understanding alters what you're trying to understand. You reach out to grasp the truth, and in grasping it, you change it. The tool you use to know the world is the very thing that prevents you from knowing the world as it is. Imagine watching someone you love sleep. In that stillness, they seem like a mystery, something whole and untouchable. But the moment you start trying to understand them, analyzing their behavior, categorizing their moods, predicting their thoughts, you've already lost something. You've turned a person into a pattern, and patterns are easier to hold, but they're not alive the way the real thing is alive. Kant understood this. He understood that the price of knowledge is distance. To know something, you have to stand apart from it. You have to freeze it, dissect it, translate it into concepts your mind can manage. And in that translation, the original is always lost. But he didn't despair. He didn't say, stop trying to know. He said, recognize the limits. Understand that knowledge is a human act, not a divine one. You'll never have the view from nowhere, the perspective of a God looking down at the truth unfiltered. You'll only ever have your view, from inside your skin, behind your eyes, using the only tools your mind provides. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the humility of admitting you can't know everything is its own kind of wisdom. Maybe the people who claim perfect certainty are the ones who've stopped listening to the world, who've mistaken their map for the territory. There's a loneliness in this realization, to know that every time you understand something, you've also pushed it a little further away, that the closer you look, the more the thing recedes. It's like trying to see your own face without a mirror. Possible to imagine, impossible to do. Kant spent his life mapping the borders of human knowledge, and what he found was not a kingdom, but an island, a small, well-lit place surrounded by an ocean of darkness. Inside the island, you can build science, morality, art, all the things that make life rich. But outside, in that vast dark water, there are questions you'll never answer. And the ocean doesn't care. It just keeps moving, indifferent to your need for solid ground. So you stand on the shore, at the edge of what you can know, and you make peace with it. You stop demanding that the universe reveal itself completely. You stop treating knowledge like conquest. Instead, you learn to live with the mystery. You learn that not knowing is not the same as failing. It's just the condition of being human, awake, aware, and forever reaching towards something just out of reach.